Wednesday, the 27th of June. Welcome everyone to Business Morning with me, Bosin Omofai. It's good to have everyone around to share this 1 hour of business and markets together. Let's get the show started on a story that will break your heart. Now let's get this on. Yesterday, Nigeria flagged off the second international conference on lead poisoning associated with artisanal gold mining activities in Nigeria by folks who use rudimentary mining methods and crude processing techniques. This is a story that Nigeria's vice president, in his keynote address, says all partners in Nigeria and around the world are now brought together to help Nigeria find solution to a problem that is killing hundreds of children that you may never heard of. Yesterday, Nigeria's vice president says artisanal mining and the life to enjoy the wealth from it is possible if we put in place the proper preventive measures and provide the right equipment. The vice president went on to say that no country should have to pay for its economic prosperity and development with the lives and well-being of its people. But that is part of what is happening in Nigeria. Now look at what has been happening over the last close to 10 years. Nigerians are poisoned. Hundreds and thousands of Nigerians are poisoned in Zamfara and Niger states, and many of these go unreported. Look at the statistics as read out yesterday by the vice president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria himself. In the year 2010 in Zamfara State, 17,000 people were severely exposed to lead poisoning. An estimated 400 to 500 innocent children lost their lives due to acute lead poisoning in Zamfara State. A few years after, in Niger State, in April 2015, in 2 villages where folks were using hands and rudimentary equipment, shovels and knives to dig for gold, nearly 30 children died from severe lead toxicity, and many more were poisoned. According to the vice president, to date, nearly 7,200 children in Zamfara and Niger states have received chelicin treatment. That was a treatment that you give to help those who are exposed to acute lead poisoning from those artisanal mining. But this is the sad story. The vice president says, unfortunately, treatment does not reverse the debilitating effects of lead poisoning. He went on to say that the thousands of children who did not die of lead poisoning in Zamfara and Niger states may therefore have to live with the cognitive and other disabilities. Vice President Osinbajo says many of these Nigerian children may never attain their full potential as productive citizens. Indications, according to the vice president's speech, he says yesterday that indications of a recontamination in previously remediated sites in Zamfara State compelled the Nigerian government to rethink and refocus its commitment and strategy to protecting our vulnerable children and communities at large. What the vice president's statement means is that even in areas where some medications had been provided, there are still issues of this problem re-emerging, that is acute lead poisoning, leading to hundreds of deaths and thousands more who may live their life in debilitating situation. Let's keep those things in mind. Now let's move on and check through with the Nigerian stock market, where we're looking at the market round for the second trading day. The market finished nearly neutral, 0.01 on the composite index when we had the closing bell still below the 38,000, 37,988.54. The market finished off at 13.761, largely unmoved despite a few gains. Investors still taking profit in the Nigerian market. Again, if you look at emerging markets around the world, the US is where investors are now piling a number of their activities because of President Trump's trade threats and tariffs that is now being spread, the trade war, that's what you may call it, around the world. So emerging markets and frontier markets are taking a little bit of a beating, and cyber investors are now looking at assets in the US as the President Trump looks to refocus America as the #1 investment destination. So if you're looking at the Nigerian market suffering a bit of a lackluster over the last few sessions, this may continue for some time to come until investors find a new bearings on how to trade the global war that is now expanding beyond Canada, Mexico, the European Union, India, and China to the Far East. Now, roll that over and look at the primary market indicators for our second trading day on the Nigerian market. Here, you're looking at the total transaction volume, very massive jump. Investors just did a bit of a sell-off on our market, £500 million. That's about 160.2% higher than what we started the week with. On a very weak note, just about 250 million ordinary shares. In Naira value, that gives you 4.71 billion. That's little less than 8.8 million US dollars based on exchange rates. In terms of transactions, that was also better at 4,202 transactions or deals than Monday when we started the week on a front footing. Now that softened 0.34 gain on Monday, softened to a lackluster 0.01 on the broad index on Tuesday. But if you look at the 5 main sectors, let's try and bring that in for you to look at. Okay, that's the banking sector. That's where investors are still booking some profit. Of course, banks always take the first line of firing when investors decide to step back from the trading floor. GT Bank, 1.2 million US dollars. Zenith Bank, 1.4 million US dollars. Shares of GT Bank, one of the top 3 tier 1 lenders, down by about 0.1%. Investors booked some profit on the big banks and even the tier 3 banks. The Sky Bank lost massively, and Sterling Bank on the second trading day of the week. The consumer goods market also down by the same margin as the banking sector. And you find industrial goods there, a bit of less than 1% gain. That was brought to the table by Lafarge Africa, almost 2.5%, 2.49% on the counter at the market close. Insurance was much better, 1.61%. Investors continued to pile into Nigeria's insurance sector. And that is one story that you need to follow. Name Insurance, very small cap insurer, 9.87% on the counter on the day. Then you find the oil and gas, where there was a very heavy haircut on Seplat. Investors traded $1 million of this E&P company on our market, also listed on the London Stock Exchange. But the sector was better by 0.07%, less than 1/10 of a percent for the day. Let's quickly run on to the oil and gas space, where you'll be looking at the market. The Seplat was a bit 0.03%. Owando again 4.72%. Those two stocks helped give us a better dark green shoot that you find about 1/10 of a percent in the on the oil and gas. Corn oil was unchanged. Double One PLC was a negative 0.5%. Owando, you see the numbers there at the bottom of the page. Take that away and look at Seplat at 651, trying to find a bit of a comeback for less than 600,000 shares, and Japol taking a bit of a back foot with some profit taking, less than 500,000 shares, lost about 9% and finishing off at 41 kobo on the counter. If we look at the unlisted securities market via the NESD, this was largely lackluster Tuesday. The USI wasn't changed, 659.16, despite 21,878 shares traded. Let's finish off this round with the fixed income market via the FMDQ OTC Securities Exchange. Treasury bills at triple-digit 100.93 billion naira on Tuesday. That's the total, but you find the most actively traded 4 on your TV screen there, with discount high, an average of about 12.6%. Today is the debt management office June auction, 60 billion naira reopening of dated papers. And that is what the market will be digesting this week. Ahead of that, the central bank, you can see the secondary market trading via the FMDQ. That's for the treasury bills. If you flip that and look at the narrow bond, that was also a little bit impressive, 12.54 billion via the FMDQ OTC Securities Exchange. That's a bit of a market, a review where we finished off on Tuesday.